Tomorrow, the season premiere of The Superstars with John Havlicek, Floyd Patterson, Rod Gilbert. Then, new ABC's International Championship Boxing. Carlos Palomino defends his WBC World Welterweight crown. And on ABC's Wide World of Sports, the Trotters dazzle them in Nashville.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
His paintings redefined comic book heroes. His vision inspired a generation. The Legend of Kingdom Come is the definitive documentary on Alex Ross, known as the Norman Rockwell of comics.
It almost looked like Renaissance paintings, except for superheroes.
He makes them look like Olympian gods.
We go behind the scenes of his definitive graphic novel, Kingdom Come, now on Blu-ray, packed with exclusive interviews and unseen artwork. Order today at legendofkingdomcome.com.
If you're here at Word Balloon, it's because you like comics, creators, conversation, pop culture subjects. Would you consider joining the League of Word Balloon Listeners? Patreon.com/wordballoon. For just $3 a month or more, you'll get exclusive access to the Word Balloon e-magazine, featuring transcriptions of some of my best conversations. When you subscribe, you'll also be part of the Word Balloon Book Club, where Brian Michael Bendis and I will pick a comic every month to review and discuss live with the League on this show. Join the League today, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thank you always for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another Word Balloon, the pop culture conversation show. We are, as always, because it's one of my favorite things in the world, the sweet science, boxing. We're switching subjects to talk about the world of boxing. And I'm happy to welcome one of my favorite writers, authors, and also occasional podcasters, Bill Dettloff, formerly of Ring Magazine and Ringside Seat. Great to see you, Bill. Welcome back.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be back. Good to see you.
Absolutely, man. You've got a brand new book out of, well, it's a collection of wonderful essays you've done for 35 years, Ring Theory. And this is great, man. Essays and articles from Ring and Ringside?
Yes, from the Ring Magazine and KO Magazine and World Boxing and HBO and Ringside Seat. Essentially, whoever I've written for the past 35 years has got a piece in there somewhere.
That's great, man. Well, and again, well, and you were literally ringside for a lot of changes in the sport. Hell, from the days of the three networks, as we saw in my opening with ABC.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out who Palomino was fighting. Was that maybe Benitez?
Yes, that's exactly who it was. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. And a closer fight than it was remembered, by the way. I think Benitez won that by a split decision. And people just kind of gloss over it because Benitez went on to be a legend, of course, and Palomino didn't. But a fairly close fight, and Palomino hung right in there for a long, pretty long time in that fight.
One of my best friends, he was first cousins with from Taxi, Mary Lou Henner.
Oh yeah.
And when Palomino was on, he invited the whole cast to his wedding, and my friend was Mary Lou's plus one, so he got to go to Carlos Palomino's wedding, which was pretty cool.
Nice. Now, interestingly, Mary Lou Henner, who's quite talented in several ways, but especially you've read about this thing that she has, where she has recollection of every single moment of her life. I don't recall the name of the condition, but I don't know. Do you think that's a burden or a good thing, John? Because I've gone back and forth about that. What do you think?
Well, Bill, I'll be honest. I wouldn't say I have as much of a photographic memory as she does, or eidetic, however they say it. But I know I kind of in my head can relive specific moments of my life, and I find it torturous. So I hope she finds it pleasant.
Yeah.
So if people are wondering, I was going to say, go ahead, Bill. No, you go ahead, Bill.
You could say to her, what happened on December 3rd, 1968? And she'll say morning, afternoon, or evening, and what time of the day, and she'll tell you. That's amazing.
I remember her being interviewed by Bob Costas, and him and even I think he even did the moon landing, and I believe she might have lost her virginity the day of the moon landing, if I remember correctly. Folks, I'm wearing a CBS News shirt. I was telling Bill I'm wearing it ironically. I missed the glory days of CBS, but unfortunately we're in a different world. Much like we're in a different world of boxing. And
indeed,
Bill, honestly, I love a lot of your essays. And
thank you.
Absolutely, man. And really, I'm just going to rattle off some titles of some of the great essays you've done. And man, well, first of all, great look at the Klitschko's, the dominant brothers of the heavyweight division. But even more so, one of my favorite things you have in here is that you called in the age of the coronavirus, boxing is the Keith Richards of sports.
It seemed that way to me because at the time, if you remember, all the major sports in America were flapping their arms, not knowing what the hell to do. Everybody was taking a shit about it and not really knowing what to do. And boxing very calmly, very quietly put on a shit ton of pretty good shows on ESPN from the bubble in Las Vegas. So the NBA didn't know what to do. Major League Baseball didn't know what to do. NFL was falling apart in terms of, I think they were in training camp at the time. But boxing was very quietly getting shit done.
Absolutely.
We were seeing more boxing on television, straight television, than we are right now, at least. But that's a different subject and a different medium we can talk about. But
well, and we'll talk because actually there has been movement going into this year as far as other platforms that are suddenly in the world of boxing, and we can talk about that. I know. First of all, I did want to acknowledge the retirement of Bud Crawford, and that's too bad. But I mean, obviously, I think the guy's going to go down as a Hall of Famer. Do you think he's gone for good?
I do. He's one of those rare guys who, like Lennox Lewis and a couple others, who just don't have the same makeup that we're used to seeing among fighters, who constantly have to come back and prove themselves, and because it's their entire identity and the way they see themselves. And I've got a piece I'm proud of in this book about just that, by the way, about why fighters can't stay retired. But I think Crawford is one of those guys like Lewis who's going to stay away because he doesn't need it. I don't think he needs boxing to feel fulfilled. He's just not that kind of guy. So he's going to be one of these rare guys who stays away. And since we're talking about Crawford, I have to say that there's a rush among otherwise intelligent, youngish fans to say he's like the greatest fighter who ever lived now and a top 5 pound for pound. And I understand why these guys are saying it, because they're connecting the dots and undisputed this and 3 times that. But I have to quote the great promoter Russell Peltz, who I don't always agree with. I do on this particular point, that you can't compare guys who've had 40 fights to guys who had 140 fights. And when there was one champion, and when you had to fight 40 times before you even got a shot at the title, and it's different. And when I say, when it comes to, greatness and who's the greatest, there's different criteria. Do you mean like in a pound for pound sense, or in a matchup sense, like who beats who? Or do you mean, consistency and longevity against high quality opposition, that kind of thing? Maybe Crawford beats most of the guys in history. That's pure conjecture. We'll never know that. Maybe he does. I don't know. Very smart fighter, very gifted. But You can't count. What did he have? 40 fights in that
Yeah.
area?
Yeah.
Right? How do you compare that to I don't know, Harry Greb or
Ray Robinson.
Robinson or Pepper, all those guys in the 40s and 50s? You just can't. You just can't.
I completely agree. No,
yeah.
absolutely, dude. Even I saw one fan showing Roy Jones against John Ruiz for their heavyweight title fight, and it's like, well, this shows that Roy Jones is one of the greatest heavyweights. And it's like, even at that time, and I'm sure you felt the same way, Bill. I was saying on Sporting News Radio, I'm like, John Ruiz with that belt is the 5th best heavyweight right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, he wasn't even in the top 4, and I'm like, don't get me wrong, it was an accomplishment as a light heavyweight moving up to heavyweight and beating a heavyweight. But as we know, Mickey Walker looked pretty good against oh God, now I was going to blank for a second. The guy that Lewis Schmeling. He gave a tough fight to Max Schmeling back in the day, but that didn't make him a great middle, heavyweight. I mean, it's an accomplishment,
Yeah, he beat a lot of good heavyweights. Mickey Walker did, and a fair number of middling heavyweights. The Max Schmeling fight, not so much. I think he got floored 7 or 8 times in that fight. It was real beating, but he did very well against other heavyweights. Jack Sharkey among them. But,
maybe I was thinking of Sharkey. There you go.
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, I think you probably were. The names are similar, right? So
not really, but Schmeling and Sharkey, the low blow and everything, and the way that
exactly right.
So they're kind of tied together.
Yeah, and the part of this is just, and we've talked about this before, John. Part of it is that the era that you grow up in, those are the fighters you see. So a guy who's grown up the average fight fan who's grown up in the 90s and watching fights in the early 2000s, seeing Roy Jones, has no idea who the hell Mickey Walker is. And he's not going through Mickey Walker's record and saying, this is a heavyweight? This is a heavyweight? He's not doing that. So that's what he sees. And we're guilty probably of the same thing when we were growing up, right?
Sure, man.
Our grandfathers would say, Jack Sharkey will kick Larry Holmes' ass every day of the week, right? And their fathers or grandfathers would say Jack Dempsey would destroy Jack Sharkey, which he kind of did. And their fathers would say John O'Sullivan would kick the crap out of Jack Dempsey. This is the way it is. But we're obligated to share our opinions on these things anyway, so that's what we do.
In your book, and he's right there on the cover, it's very clear your love of George Foreman. The cover for the audio audience shows George beating Michael Moore on the way to that great heavyweight comeback title fight that shocked us all. Nobody saw that coming. I don't know if you did, Bill, back then. Did you?
I did not. I wished I did. I got a story in there about when I was boxing and how George Foreman was instrumental in my boxing and eventually writing boxing. But it was more than that to me. He was really a hero to me from the moment I saw a picture of him in Sports Illustrated until he died. Even after all these years, I still wanted to be George Foreman, and not because he was enormously wealthy, but just because he seemed like everything that a man should be. Now, I don't know about his personal life not that much, right? And I know that toward the end, the last 10 years or so, you really couldn't believe anything he said because he was just always in marketing mode. He just was. He was afraid of every fighter, and he didn't want any part of Mike Tyson and this and that. It was all bullshit because he was stuck in that mode. But he was enormously important to me as a kid and as a teenager and as a person throughout my 20s and 30s. And I certainly did not expect him to beat Michael Moore because I had just seen him lose to Tommy Morrison. And I said, man, if he can't beat Tommy Morrison, who went life and death with Carl Williams, how the hell is he going to beat Michael Moore? So I fully went into that fight expecting him to lose.
Did you?
Absolutely.
Did you ever have a chance to? Did you ever have a chance to interview him?
Not as such. I spoke with him when I was working with Joe Frazier on Box Like the Pros, the instructional book we did, and my editor suggested I get somebody famous to do a blurb on the cover. And if you see up in there, the right corner of that, there's a blurb from George Foreman.
Wow.
And I called him and asked him if he'd be interested. And I'd never spoken to him before. And I was very nervous, of course, because people say never meet your heroes, right? Because they're never as good as you hope that they are or imagine them that they would be. But I got his number from Nigel Collins and spoke with him and told him why I was calling. And he said, I would do anything for Joe. Yeah, just tell me what you need me to do and I'll do anything for Joe.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what, people, I think of Larry Holmes when I think of that little anecdote I just told you, because if you go online and look at the speech Larry Holmes gave at his induction in Canastota several years ago, he spends 80% of it ripping George and calling him a phony and saying how George was scared to fight him, and everybody in the press knows what a phony George is, and he's full of shit. He's not the person he pretends to be. But I think back that moment with George, and he owed nothing to me or Joe Frazier, but his first words were, "Yeah, for Joe, I'll do anything. Just tell me what you need me to do." And I said, "Well, I'm writing this book, and would like a little blurb from you, just praising the book." And he essentially said, "Just tell me, just write something and put my name there," because he wasn't,
Yeah, sure.
he wasn't the most literate guy. He was brilliantly rich in so many and great in so many ways, but the guy's not a writer, right? So I did that, and I read it to him. I called him back and read it to him, and he said, "That's great, that's fine." I'll tell you something else about what a phony George Foreman was. In the early days of his comeback, my nephew, who was a teenager at the time in high school, was a big George Foreman fan because I was, right? So when Foreman announced his comeback in '87, again, my older nephew was in high school, and he wanted to write a term paper for his English class on Foreman. And my nephew got the number of his gym in Houston at the time, or wherever it was. I don't remember now. I think it was Houston, and called him up. And he said, "Can I speak to George Foreman?" And Foreman got on the phone with him. Okay, this high school kid, all right, and talked with him for 40 minutes about his comeback. This wasn't somebody from the New York Times or Sports Illustrated. It was a high school kid. And so some people agree with Holmes when they say that, Foreman was a phony and you couldn't trust him and that kind of thing. And in a sense, I believe that in terms of in the ring. Like, I still think he was a badass in the ring. And when he was hurt, when he was hitting people, he was trying to knock the shit out of them.
Oh, yeah.
That's what a fighter's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? But it'll always stick in my craw that Holmes said he was a phony because in personal experience, I found it to be anything but.
I completely
Again,
agree.
he wasn't running for president. He had no reason. There was no financial incentive for him to talk to my high school aged nephew on the phone for 40 minutes about his comeback, for his term paper.
I think when we did our last thing, we did an analysis of a Foreman fight the last time you and I talked. And I might have told you then, I had several opportunities to talk to George. And the first time was when I was doing radio in Bloomington, Illinois. And it was to promote the pay-per-view for him against Cowie. And I got to interview both of them. And I really was a fan of both of theirs and couldn't have been nicer. Then he did an exhibition in Chicago. Really was more of a glorified sparring because he even had headgear on and stuff. And Tim Tomaszek, Jeepers Creepers, was with the opponent and everything. But
really?
Yeah, really, really kind in that encounter. And then I'd see him at HBO fights in Vegas when I was covering boxing for Sporting News Radio, and he'd be in the press tent and available for interviews. And I remember for the De La Hoya Fernando Vargas fight, I was talking about not only that fight, but also one of the Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales fights. Okay. And he gave great analysis. And I'm like, we finished, and I'm like, hey, this was really like analytical. I'm like, I like this side of you. How come you don't do that on the TV show? And he said, nah, they want me to be the clown, man. He goes, Larry's there to be the smart guy. Jim does the play-by-play, and I'm the funny guy. And he goes, that's what I'm there for. And as an ex-fighter. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And he goes, yeah, it works. Okay. Yeah. But I was glad I played it on our network. And it's like, no, here's George Foreman being legitimately serious and giving good analysis.
Yeah.
For boxing. Yeah. He had to have done as well as he did, especially in Act 2 of his career and his comeback, because it was all smarts as opposed to the first time when it really was all power.
Exactly right. Very well put. And he will always be my hero. And so it was very important for me to get a photo of him on my new book. And that was courtesy of our mutual friend, Marco Cronenberg, who designed the cover.
It's a beautiful
Great
shot.
Picture. Sure
Absolutely.
is.
No, it's again, nobody saw it coming. And like it or not, George Foreman was a significant heavyweight champion in a good portion of the 90s. And until I kind of thought they took it away from him when he fought
I did.
Shannon Briggs, you know?
Oh, yeah. I initially thought, because of my love for him, that it was an outright robbery, but I've watched it since then. Probably wasn't a robbery. The other thing I wanted to say about the Moore fight was, and I'm sure I've said this before, is that when he knocked Moore out, I thought that there's no way this can be real. This has to be fixed, because things like that don't happen in boxing or in life. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. A perfect finale to that fairy tale that was his comeback. It was too perfect. And things like that just don't happen in life, but it did.
Yeah.
And it didn't take me long to realize, of course, it wasn't fixed, that it was, as George said, he fixed it with his right hand. But it was so perfect that I initially thought there's no way that's really happened, but it did.
I get it, buddy. No, absolutely. I want to acknowledge some of the other great books Bill has written over the years, like his wonderful Boxing's Miracle Man, Matthew Saad Muhammad. Fantastic. Yeah. What a tragic figure
sure.
As a light heavyweight champion. But, man, just a fighter not only in the ring but outside the ring. Absolutely. Yep. And then, of course, the neglected heavyweight champion, the guy after Joe Louis, Ezzard Charles, again, really coming in this really interesting era of the 50s when the IBC really took over boxing. Yep. And, Ezzard and Jersey Joe Walcott kept exchanging the belt back and forth. And four fights amongst them,
Four fights. Ezzard won the first two and Walcott the second two. Right.
Just crazy, man. But also,
it was crazy.
Probably a better light heavyweight than a heavyweight. But again, an overachiever in doing great things at heavyweight.
Yeah, he sure was. He was definitely a better light heavyweight than heavyweight. And one of the reasons I wrote that book was because I wanted to acknowledge him as the greatest light heavyweight who ever lived.
Sure.
Who became a very busy and very capable heavyweight champion. And in fact, made the most defenses in the shortest amount of time of any heavyweight champion ever. But there were problems, not only because the country and the boxing world was still in love with Joe Louis, but he wasn't even universally recognized as a heavyweight champion. The IBC decided that after Louis decided that the winner of the Charles Walcott fight, because they were the two top contenders, would be the heavyweight champion, which is kind of, today we'd call that a paper champion or an email champion, which is what they called Devin Haney for a while, right? Or like a Ken Norton thing, right? Where he didn't win it in the ring exactly. It was Joe Louis retired. And again, a lot of people considered Louis. Yeah. A lot of people considered
too. Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. A lot of people considered Louis the champion. And in fact, Great Britain did not recognize Ezzard Charles as a heavyweight champion. And you can see why, because the promoter just said, we're picking you two guys to fight for the title. And whoever wins is champion. So and you can see how that would get some resistance. It would get some resistance today, too. It wouldn't matter because there was 5 other champions. But
sometimes when you see those like highlight reels of boxing's history, they kind of gloss over the fact that, Louis came back, fought Charles, lost to Charles, but then he kept fighting and actually had a couple wins before he fought Marciano.
Exactly right. He had some
classic eighth round knockout to Marciano.
Exactly right. He had some very good wins. He had a win over Jimmy Bivens and several other top-ranked guys whose styles were made for him, really. But that's just the way it is. That's boxing. Styles make fights, right? And so he looked formidable. And most people don't get into that level of detail. And the other thing that I never see acknowledged anywhere is that after Louis retired, he went on this run doing exhibitions. And over the next several years was hardly out of the ring at all, knocking out guys after guys in exhibitions. And I mean knocking them out. These weren't like headgear and pillow gloves. He was knocking guys out, beating them up bad. Top contenders in exhibitions. So it wasn't like when he came back to fight Charles, he hadn't fought in X number of years. And in fact, it got so bad to the point that managers were refusing to let their guys fight Louis because he wasn't going easy. They were getting paid exhibition money, right? Not real fight money, and then getting the shit kicked out of them by Louis, who took it very seriously. So, but most people don't know those things, and you're not going to know them unless you were there, or happened to write a book about it, which I did.
Yes, you did. And
for better or worse.
Well, honestly, man, I used to write my little agate articles for Boxing Illustrated for several years, a little while for Ring Magazine in the early years. of my writing. From 89 to 2006 is when I really covered boxing. And I really went whole hog into it and tried to learn as much about the history as I possibly could. And that's why I appreciated Ring and all of the TV boxing magazines like KO and those things, and certainly the British magazines as well.
Sure.
And it was just a great education, and that's why I appreciated what you guys were doing. Pardon me, at ringside seat. Sorry, everybody, still getting over that flu, but there's a great cover from ringside seat. This was wonderful. I'm sorry you guys aren't still doing it.
I am too. We tried to find a balance in every issue between historical stuff and contemporary stuff. I think that more times than not we found a good balance, and we had such good writers. And Mako was a great designer and the visionary behind the magazine and the founder. But it's just one of those things. It's hard to make enough money these days with so much competition. Not just in sports. Right, but even in combat sports now, we got boxing, we got MMA, wrestling is still a big thing. Now bare knuckle, and you got to have the right formula. And we just had kind of an old school formula because we liked old school, but it's hard to stay. It's hard to keep things afloat in old school sometimes.
Not only that, but just in general. I mean, we do. In fact, we just had Shakur Stevenson's big win this past weekend.
Yeah,
but really, as far as the American fan, it's nowhere near the excitement that the Europeans get over it. The Brits, really, literally, pretty much the rest of the world still loves boxing to a high degree. And really, whereas when we, Madison Square Garden and Vegas were the capitals of boxing, not really anymore.
Yeah, I laugh every time there's a big fight in Vegas. Well, not that there is anymore. Let me amend that. I'll say I laugh whenever there was a big fight at the Garden, and some mainstream writer or broadcaster will say, "Oh, the mecca of boxing, the home of bullshit." It hasn't been that in 60 years. What are you talking about? But lazy writers pull that shit out of their ass.
I'm hip.
But hey, there was some fun boxing at that Garden last weekend. And Shakur Stevenson did a job on Teofimo.
Yeah.
Last time we talked. I hate people who do this, but last time we talked, I said that Shakur was this era's Pernell Whitaker. And I stand by that. I think this guy's untouchable, and there's nobody going to get close to touching him for a while. It's not. I don't mean he's got the same style as Whitaker, of course, but he's a southpaw. He's a good stand-up boxer. He knows distance real well. He's got a great jab. He knows what to do on the inside. There's nothing this kid can't do except, hey, he's not a puncher.
Right.
But even go to the body okay for a classical boxer the way he is. And I don't see anybody touching him for a long time. He's going to be one of these guys where we count, when he's about done, we're going to count the number of rounds he's lost in his career, not the number of fights he's lost in his career. Kind of the way it was with Whitaker, and the way a lot of people thought it was going to be with Jones until he just, the wheels came off, which was kind of fun to see, frankly.
Well, he lost his speed with Jones, and then once he lost his speed, he was an easy target because he never held his hands up. And it just, he'd juke around with his body when he had the speed. But as soon as his legs were gone, Tarver and the like, Glenn Robinson, wasn't it the one of his victories?
Glenn Johnson.
Glenn Johnson. Thank you, man. Right. Yeah.
Right. And that story is in the book too, by the way. Glenn Johnson's win over Roy Jones, and I have a long talk with Glenn Johnson after that. And the feature is in the book. But yeah, and if you want to look at the difference between a guy who got by on. And he hates when people say this, by the way. Roy Jones hates it when people say he was more physically talented than schooled, because he seems like he says that's an insult to his work ethic. But it's true. It's true. Yeah. You get a guy like Bernard Hopkins, who wasn't nearly as physically talented. Look at how long he fought.
Exactly.
At a very high level, because the guy really knew what he was doing in the ring.
You got it.
Roy Jones was doing it with physical talent, and
I'm with you. No, absolutely. I understand, and I completely agree. What was it like doing the book with Joe Frazier?
Fun and a little scary because it was Joe Frazier. And I got to say, it's interesting because I just read Mark Cram's biography of Joe that came out, I guess, a few years ago. And he wrote it after I wrote that book with Joe. So if nothing else, I was pleased to find out from Mark's book that near the end, Joe wasn't living in the room over his garage anymore. Like he had moved out and the gym was gone, but he had a nice apartment with his girlfriend and he wasn't starving to death. Good. He wasn't, he was broke, but it wasn't horrible. Right. So, and he wasn't living in squalor. So I was pleased to find that out because when we worked together, it was bad. But Joe was, for the most part, I just felt like I was talking to anybody else when Joe and I would talk. But every once in a while, I'd get this flash of, holy shit, this is Joe Frazier. That was cool. But I couldn't talk to him like that. I just had to talk to him like a regular guy. And I always tell this story because I love to tell it. When we were going over the chapters in the book, and we're going to do a section on clinching, and I said to Joe, and I remember sitting with him in the gym, so Joe, we're going to do this part about clinching and when to do it, how to do it, when you shouldn't do it, blah blah blah. And he said, I never clinch. My job is to make the other guy clinch. And what a perfect description of Joe Frazier as a fighter, and as a person too, by the way. It was just perfect. It was great.
Absolutely, man. No, I always say that first fight against Ali, throw anybody in. No one would beat Joe Frazier that night because he was such a man on the mission. And you see it in the video. He keeps moving forward. Nothing stops him. Nothing. And that's why he won. And it really is this brilliant performance 50 plus years ago.
It's one of the great performances in all of modern sports, I think. Not just in modern boxing. And it's because he had such enmity toward Ali, deservedly and rightly.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know the story. He helped Ali when Ali, lost his license, and literally put money in Ali's pocket and did everything he could to get Ali's license back. And then they make the fight, and Ali's calling him Uncle Tom. And again, I know it was wrestling, kayfabe, and I know it was to juice up the gate and everything. But it really was at a volatile moment, of course, as you and I know, during the civil rights, struggle, and not cool to call another black guy Uncle Tom. And there, man, even damn it, see, we're doing it. We warned each other that our brains were gonna slip. God, the guy who did Real Sports,
Brian Gumbel.
Brian Gumbel, God bless you, thank you. Brian Gumbel writes Joe Frazier. Black man in a white champion's body or something to that effect. I'm misquoting it, but essentially wrote that, he's an Uncle Tom. And it's like, not cool, man. Joe Frazier was just an earnest working class guy that didn't get involved in politics and really was just an athlete.
Yeah. And had a blacker upbringing than Ali did.
Yes.
Very poor in South Carolina, very poor in a rural area.
True.
Ali grew up middle class in Louisville, a nice neighborhood, segregated neighborhood. But in Philly, Joe was hanging around with powerful white politicians, and he was a friend of the cops. He's very friendly to Frank Rizzo, that scumbag mayor they had out there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make him an Uncle Tom. I just think he was a guy who liked attention, right? Like any fighter does.
Understood.
He liked being, being liked. But Ali brought out the best in Joe Frazier.
While we're talking about the heavyweights, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was the Anthony Joshua Jake Paul fight. Tell me.
Yes.
Talk to me.
You know what? I was hoping that somebody, I don't know why I thought this would happen organically, but I was hoping somebody would ask me to write a column about this because I really wanted to get off my chest. Fortunately, you asked me to come on your show, John, so I'm going to get it off my chest here. What was everybody screaming for Jake Paul to do when he was fighting these bums and MMAers and YouTubers?
Fight a real heavyweight.
Yeah. So the guy goes out and picks a top 5 heavyweight, Olympic gold medalist, former heavyweight champion, gets the shit kicked out of him, reportedly gets his jaw busted. That should satisfy everybody about in terms of him not having any balls. Everybody wanted him to go fight somebody. He picks up one of the best heavyweights in the world. I got my problems with Anthony Joshua, but he's one of the best heavyweights in the world. Okay.
Sure.
And as soon as he caught up with Jake Paul, it ended the way it was supposed to end, the only way it could end, right? But you got to, number one, give Jake Paul credit for getting in the friggin' ring with Anthony Joshua. How many fights does Jake Paul have? 5?
More than that, but yeah, like 10 or something like that.
10?
But yeah.
How many 10-fight pros would get in the ring with Anthony Joshua? Right?
But Bill, I gotta say though, that is the biggest ring I ever saw. It was a parking lot.
Sure.
My God.
Yeah,
and
it was.
That bothered me. Were they 2-minute rounds? I can't even remember.
They
might have been. I don't know. But yeah, and again, I don't know. I'm sorry, man. I'm still.
Well, here's the other thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, okay. The other thing is that, and I'm sure you heard this elsewhere, John, that there are more people when Jake Paul fights. There were more people watching boxing maybe than in the past 40 years. On Netflix, 10 million people, 17 million people, 30 million people, whatever it is.
Yes.
And a lot of these people are Jake Paul fans.
Absolutely.
They're young kids who would never watch a boxing match otherwise, except their hero, Jake Paul, is boxing somebody. And it almost doesn't matter who's in the main event because the undercards are just good enough so that put together just well enough that there may be a good fight or two, which is a lot more than you can say for a lot of undercards that are put on underneath big fights, right?
Yeah.
And particularly women's fights. Jake Paul's been great for female fighters. The ones that he managed, that he manages, are making more money than they ever have. He's really putting a spotlight on them.
Well, and honestly, the main support fight for the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight is the best women's fight I ever saw. It was right. And that's the good news about women's boxing is it's finally at a level of real competition.
Yeah, they're not all awful anymore, right?
Yeah,
they're not all terrible anymore.
You had Christy Martin down here, and you had Layla Ali up here, and it's Mutt and Jeff fighting each other, exactly. and it was ridiculous. Right. And I mean, they were two big names, but no business being in the same ring. But now we literally have in each weight class legitimate contenders, legitimate champions.
I agree.
Yeah. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say. I don't know what Paul does next. I mean, he's still healing, and rightfully so. What about Joshua? I mean, I guess he's waiting for the fight coming up with Tyson Fury and the other guy whose name I always forget. It's long.
Makhmadev.
Yes, thank you.
Well, before we touch on that, let me just one more thing about Jake and Logan Paul. And again, I don't like YouTubers. I don't like influence. These guys are douchebags, and I don't like their politics. But they also set up an account that they use just to rehabilitate old boxing gyms in inner cities and build new ones. I know personally of 2 gyms out here in Pennsylvania that have moved to bigger, better facilities. Oh, I'm sorry, one in Pennsylvania, one in New Jersey, moved to bigger, better facilities as a result of Jake Paul and his brother.
Okay.
That's important shit. Every boxing fan cries, oh, there aren't enough gyms. The gyms are going away. Nobody's putting any money into them. Kronk was just remodeled and relocated and is up and running again, almost like aesthetically the way it used to. I'm not certain that money came from the Paul brothers, but my guess would be that it did.
Wow,
yeah. That's important.
Well, and also you're right, and the way you characterized Jake's fans, it's like Happy Gilmore fans in the golf movie, and it really is the same thing. Yeah, I hear you, man. So I don't know. But we got 2 in April, man, 1 week after the other. We're going to have 2 very big weeks. Deontay Wilder is fighting Derek Chisora, which is kind of crazy. But Chisora is the rock that, you can't move. I mean, I give the guy a hell of a lot of credit for being an almost 500 fighter. Not really, but certainly a lot of losses in this day and age. But damn, that guy, he's a great kind of, hey, if you want to be a contender, you got to beat me. And I forget who he just beat in his last fight. And really, was it Baby Miller? Big Baby
Miller?
It was one of them.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But again, he was supposed to lose, and he didn't.
He beat that Danish dude whose name I can't recall. But
that's right.
Everybody, you know what? Every time this guy loses, they're crying for him to quit. He's just going to be punchy when he gets old and have dementia. Meanwhile, he's raking in 4 or 5 million a fight, 8 million for a fight.
Yeah.
And beating younger guys. I will watch the shit out of him and Deontay Wilder. I'll watch that in a heartbeat.
Totally.
The unfortunate part of this is I don't think Wilder would be doing any of this had his wife not left him in divorce and is in process of divorcing him and taking half his shit. That's why he's fighting, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Because he looked terrible against Parker and terrible against the Big Bang, and probably can't fight at all anymore because he just doesn't have the quickness he needs to get off that right hand. He just doesn't, and everybody knows exactly that's all he's got, right? So all you got to do is watch for the right hand.
Well, and that's what's going to make this fight compelling because Chisora has enough ring smarts to avoid it. That was so beautiful when Zhang and when Parker beat him. I got to be honest, I was never a fan. I really wasn't. Even when he was our American heavyweight champion and beating the nobodies that he did to amass his 40 knockout wins before fighting Tyson Fury. And I wasn't the biggest Tyson Fury fan either, but it seems like Tyson has settled down. What do you think about Fury coming back?
That's not a surprise at all. He's one of the guys I quote in my article about how difficult it is to quit boxing. And I'm never surprised when fighters come back. Never. I was a nothing Golden Gloves amateur dude, and it took me years to quit to finally get it out of my system. So I can't imagine how somebody who's a world champion, I might have said this to you before during a discussion like this, how many people do you know who are the best in the world at something, anything? I don't know anybody who's the best in the world at anything. Now imagine being the best in the world as a prize fighter, millions and millions of dollars, millions of fans, beautiful women throwing themselves at you, all the material things you could want, the physical gratification you get from the actually doing something that you're really great at, like if you're Joe Louis or Ali or Larry Holmes. I don't know how you ever retire. How do you ever walk away from that? You'd have to kill me.
I get it. No, Rod Serling in Requiem for a Heavyweight, it is the most poignant, and it's really not about a champ. It's a guy who comes this close, as he says, Mountain McClintock, who says that. He's like, this isn't a bum. This is a guy that almost was champion of the world. Or, of course, Bud Schulber's great speech from On the Waterfront. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. And yeah, man, no, I get it. And yeah, I mean, I certainly from afar saw guys like Ray Leonard come back and get floored, by not only Kevin Howard before the Hagler fight, which was a stumble before he beat Hagler, but Terry Norris.
Terry Norris destroyed him.
Yeah.
And he still wasn't convinced because the fighter will always find some reason or excuse to make afterwards. Oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Even after Hector Camacho knocked him out, Leonard said, my ankle was fucked up or my Achilles heel was ripped or something. And he almost came back again. He had signed for 2 or 3 fights.
I didn't know that.
After the Camacho fight, and then backed down at the last minute.
Wow. Yeah.
Because he couldn't understand where it went. When he was great, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and he couldn't understand where it went. He kept thinking he could get it back. I completely get it. I get it. So I don't know how any of these guys retire.
Your book is again really amazing because, like you said, it goes back 35 years. Right now, and it's been the last couple of years, we're really seeing this influx of money coming from Saudi Arabia, and it's incredible. And we're getting these very competitive contender fights where the Saudis are willing to throw big money at them, as much as the championship fights that they're able to make as well. And I find that fascinating. But now we have a new player that is playing with the Saudis, and that's UFC's Dana White and his company. Tell me about your observations. They've had 2 televised cards so far, right?
I think 1. I think it might be 2.
They had one the day after Shakur.
Right.
So I think that was the second one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, either way, what they've done so far has been very well received. The fighters were well matched, and holy shit, what happens when you match 2 fighters? Well, you get good fights. And there's a lot of talk about him implementing the UFC model in boxing, and there have been lots of litigation by UFC fighters against Dana White, or the desire to litigate against him for him not paying them enough money. And I get that. He wants all the money for himself. Who doesn't, I guess?
Yeah.
But kind of need to do something here in boxing. Kind of need to do something. Something's got to change.
Agreed.
Like you said, in much of the rest of the world, boxing is huge still. I love watching fights from Great Britain on DAZN, even if a lot of times the fights suck. The crowds are so into it, man. They friggin' love it. The
Yes.
Brits love their boxing still, and I see and hear Brits complaining about boxing losing some of its status over there. But man, every time I tune into fights that are happening in Great Britain, they're rocking. But something's got to happen here. Something's got to get different because it's real bad. The product sucks to a large degree, or I should say, in comparison to what it should be or could be.
Well,
right?
and further, the broadcasters, and we've talked about this before, there's no objectivity, and that bothers. And even with, at least leading up to, I couldn't watch the card because I'm sorry, man. I forget what your opinion is of Max Kellerman. He's such a homer, and really the DAZN guys are homers as well. I find very little objectivity, and that's what I always appreciated about HBO, and to a lesser degree, Showtime in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, were both really trying to call balls and strikes, to mix metaphors, fairly, and especially guys like Lampley and Larry Merchant. And I'll never forget during the whole Tyson Buster Douglas controversy that they were objective journalists and were standing up to Don King and Mike Tyson and saying, "Sorry guys, you lost. Deal with it." And and I missed that. And there's just this, like I said, homerism, and of course it's happening on the Jake Paul cards as well.
Sure.
That we've seen on Netflix. But yeah, I don't know your thoughts on all that.
Well, my biggest beef with commentary on these cards is that the continual selling. First of all, everything's on pay-per-view, so if you're watching, you've already bought it. And we keep talking about this. You can stop selling and telling me how great it is. I'm already watching it, number one. Yeah, no, and I barely make it more than 20 minutes into any card without muting. I just do, because there's so few that I really like. But there are times, there are times when Lampley and Merchant and Stewart annoyed me. There were times when Foreman annoyed me as a commentator. It's just the way it is. As far as Kellerman, you know what? I get that, man, he annoys a lot of people. I find almost no one who likes him. But I will say this for Max, and I can't say this about a lot of people in boxing. He is able to perfectly articulate his argument for any position he takes. You might disagree with it, but how many people do you know, professionally or personally, who can say, okay, this is why I believe this is the case, and then tell you the precedents and what leads him to that opinion, and do it fairly unemotionally, and have it make sense, even if you disagree with it. I admire that about Max. There are things that I don't agree with him about. When he was in the late stages of HBO, when Andre Ward was fighting, Max was a huge Andre Ward fan and refused to criticize him in any way negatively. Anyway. But there are many issues, again, that I don't agree with him on. He's able to articulate his position better than anybody I've heard in sports broadcasting, objectively. So there's that.
I liked him better analyzing in the studio rather than being ringside and calling.
I get that. Yep.
And Cronenberg and I used to always laugh at that Triple G fight against Canelo, and he's winning the
story of the fight.
Yes, he's winning the story. Is he winning the fight? And it's like, oh, fuck you for coming up with that line hours before or days before the fight. And that's why I hate Morrow, the play-by-play guy that continues to find jobs at Amazon and Netflix and all these places. And it's like, dude, congratulations. I mean, I got another one. Scintillating action. Let me write that down. I'm going to say that at some point in the fight. And it's just like, Jesus, man, it's like you're rattling off a shopping list. It's like, let the fight happen. That's what I loved about Dunphy and and even Cosell, I believe, was extemporaneous as far as the things that he said. I really do.
Yeah, I do too, for the most part. I was thinking recently that that I have some generational bias because I hate it when contemporary broadcasters scream, like Joe Tessitore screams constantly, right?
Yes.
But I was thinking I had some generational bias because I don't mind when Cosell screamed, "Down goes Frazier," right? And there were other times when Cosell screamed. But I just realized very recently the difference. Cosell was screaming, "Down goes Frazier," because it was a huge upset. It was unexpected. Joe Frazier was undefeated, heavyweight champion of the world. Foreman was the 3-1 underdog. And it was something to scream about. Tessitore and guys like him scream when things happen that you expect to happen. When an upcoming prospect who's 18-0 fights a guy who's 3-6 from Uruguay and he gets knocked out in the second round, they scream.
Yeah.
That's what's supposed to. That's what we expected to happen. There's no reason to scream. So at least I can say when Cosell screamed, he was screaming about the right thing. Don Dunphy never screamed, so that was cool. But a lot of these guys scream just when things happen that are supposed to happen. So I guess that's what's annoying about it.
I'm absolutely with you on all of that. And again, one of your favorite fights, Ron Lyle and George Foreman. Again, just this shocking.
I was screaming. Yeah.
Knockdown after knockdown, both guys. It's one of the greatest heavyweight contender fights ever. And yeah, again, because the unexpected was happening, and he was reacting to the unexpected. Not like I said, stock phrases like Tessitore and Morrow. The worst. The worst. So yeah, I don't know, man. What are you gonna do? That's all right. Well, we turn the sound down, and we can. That's the great thing about most sports. You can turn off the sound if you hit the play-by-play
right.
people, and you can still. And especially boxing, it's no problem, man. We don't need it.
Right.
So yeah, there you go. Well, yeah, man. Anyway, what else do you got coming up, man? I mean, honestly, I'm glad that Ring Theory is out there. And I'm thrilled for you because, again, it's another fantastic book for you. But what else is going on?
Just getting. I'm trying to market this book and get it out there, and that's winding down now.
Okay.
So I'm working on a feature that I probably don't want to share much about right now, where it's going to land or what it's about yet. But so I'm going to continue writing about boxing, and for as long as people will continue to read.
Do you want to do any sort of Substack or anything like that to perpetuate? Because Rayful, I still follow Dan's Substack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think honestly, I only knew Dan very, very. We'd be at fights together and we'd talk a little bit. I don't claim to know him well, but I've always respected his opinions, and I think I think he calls balls and strikes fairly and everything.
Yeah, he's probably pretty objective. Yeah. He's a good reporter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and your guy, Eric Raskin, I certainly have a lot of respect for him,
Really, Eric's still writing for Boxing Scene and doing a good job.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, that's the thing. It just feels like the journalists that I do respect and everything, there's fewer and fewer of them out there.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like all the journalists that I read coming up are more or less gone now.
Yeah.
Right? Steve Farhood, Michael Katz, Ron Borges.
Nigel. Well, and Nigel, is just not, God bless him. I'm glad he's still with us. Christ, did you see on Facebook? He posted that old photo of him, I guess from a couple of years ago. I think he was like either long distance running or something, and just beat the shit out of his face. And I'm like, holy shit, what? And I hadn't texted him in a year or two, and I'm like, Jesus, Nigel, are you okay? And he goes, hey, great to hear from you. He goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, that Facebook photo. He's like, oh, that's old. I'm like, well, don't scare people like that, Nigel. I'm like, you're not a young man anymore, dude. And again, I don't want to, I'm not wishing you the worst or anything, but it's like, God damn, man, we want to make sure you're okay. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's funny. Nigel's still hanging in there, and
great writer.
Bernard Fernandez.
Yes. God. Poor Bernard.
Anywhere now.
How's he doing with his back and everything? Isn't it Bernard's back?
Bernard. Yeah. He has some back problems, and his wife died, of course, and so he's been going through it. But I think his project right now is he's writing a book about his relationship with his late wife.
Oh wow!
Which will be interesting. Yeah. But I guess the point I was trying to make is every generation goes through this, right? There's a crop of writers who come in, and the old guys hate them, and the new guys follow, the young guys follow them, and then they get old, and a new group follows them, and it's just it's just the way it is. It's the way it is.
There was a book that you guys did a review of in Ringside Seat about how the hip hop culture really embraced boxing, and I really want to talk to that author because he's right. And I mean, I saw it when Roy Jones fought David Telesco
Mhm.
at Radio City. I don't know if you were at that fight.
I was not, but I remember the
Okay.
fight.
Well, I was lucky because HBO, out of their generosity, it was a package deal where they were letting a lot of the FM guy talk radio shows see a sneak preview of the first episode of the second season of The Sopranos, hang out
Okay.
with them in Little Italy, and then go to Radio City to watch Roy Jones. And I was chosen because I was the boxing reporter for the sports station. So they
Nice.
let me go. And yeah, it was great. But yeah, I mean, it was that, if you
It's a
remember,
shitty fight, but yeah,
it was a very shitty fight, but a very elaborate show, given
Sure,
that it was
yeah.
Radio City. And it
Yeah.
started with Method Man, and I forget,
Yeah.
and I want to say a few other rappers. As Roy Jones was walking to the ring, they had a whole production. And then Whitney Houston came out and sang the Star Spangled Banner. So it was just really like, oh goddamn, this is a show. You know,
Yeah.
well, in the words of Tony Burton in Rocky, in the first Rocky movie, he thinks, he doesn't know it's a show. He thinks it's a damn fight.
Yeah, exactly right.
Sad but true. I didn't see, I'll have to confess, I didn't see the Christy Martin movie, because, and I like Sydney Sweeney, and I really respected her for doing this. I'm not surprised the film failed, though, because it's a very depressing story about this tragic athlete who was a gay woman in a marriage with a man who was physically abusive, and it's like not a feel-good story, really,
Yeah, I didn't see it either, and we might have discussed it before too, because I don't ever see boxing movies, especially biopics like this, because they're never accurate, and I think the misrepresentations always bug me, so I never watch those kind of movies. But I also am a fan of Sydney Sweeney.
Well, I don't. Hey, man, exactly. She's a lovely woman. She
certainly
is.
is.
And again, I give her credit for trying to go against her image.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
So,
But interestingly, you said it's kind of a grim story, and it is. But all boxing stories are.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's interesting. I just had not long ago, I somehow cobbled together a reunion of a bunch of guys who fought out of the same gym that I did in the early to mid 80s. And none of us, there's about 6 of us, and none of us have seen each other for over 40 years.
Wow.
Okay. And most of us are living around the same area, in the tri-state area. And we all fought out of the same gym in South River, New Jersey for a few years in the mid 80s. And I cobbled together this reunion. We got together a few weeks ago. And of course, time and age brings a wisdom that isn't there when you're in your teens and early 20s, right? And a few of us were talking about, why this guy boxed or why that guy boxed or what brought us to the gym. And we all arrived, not at the same time, but over the years, I guess, to the conclusion that, and it sounds self-evident, but that guys don't go to boxing gyms because they have perfect, great lives. Never. You might go to a gym to work out and have a great life, but guys who have great lives don't become boxers, right? Yeah. And so when you say that her story, it applies to women too.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
When you say that story is a sad one, and it's grim, it's true. It absolutely is true. But all of them are. Look at my favorite boxing movie that you just mentioned, Rocky. What a pathetic, awful life he's leading, right? Until he isn't, because of boxing. And that also goes back to what I said earlier about I don't know how guys ever quit. In my piece, in one of my pieces in that book, I write about how Ali said after the third Frazier fight that the fight was the closest that he could ever think of to what it would be like to die, right? Which is quite a thing to say. And it wasn't like he quit boxing after that. He had a lot of fights after that, too many.
He did.
All right. And so I asked a question in the article, what would compel a man to keep fighting after making that statement? Why would you keep doing that to yourself? And at that time, he was older. Well, for those days, it was older. Now, 34, 35 is nothing in boxing, right? You got guys like Fury in their late 30s, early 40s or whatever.
Absolutely.
But so what would compel a man at that age? I know he did at that time in his career was complain about how hard it was to get in shape, how he hated getting up in the morning to run, and every fight was a struggle, and getting in shape was a struggle. So what would compel him to keep doing it? And you could say, well, most people will say, well, for the money. Ali was the most famous man, was the most famous human on the planet at that time. Okay? If you're the most famous human on the planet, there are a lot of ways to make money that don't involve torturing yourself. And the reason is because everything that good that happened in Ali's life, everything, and there was enough good for several lifetimes, came from boxing.
Yeah.
That's why he kept doing it. How do you blame him?
Yeah.
How could you blame him?
No,
His
I
life
hear
would
you.
have been shit if not for boxing.
Absolutely.
And all these guys, the same thing about like Matthew Saad Muhammad. It's a tragic story. It's a terrible story. You know what would have been really awful? If he'd never boxed. You'd never know his name. You wouldn't know who he was. He would have died anonymous and broke. But at least for a 4 or 5 year period in the early 80s, he was the king. He was the shit. You know, and that's a lot more than a lot of guys can say.
Absolutely. And a very highly competitive period
Absolutely.
for light heavyweights. Only diehard fans like you, Bill, know how great the light heavyweight division was. And that's why I always feel bad for Michael Spinks, because most people remember him from the 91 seconds against Mike Tyson and not cleaning out the light heavyweight division like he did. So, yeah.
That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
is such a shame because he was a badass. Michael Spinks was 100% badass.
100%.
For him to do to Marvin Johnson what he did, and Marvin Johnson was also 100% badass. To stop him with one punch like he did, Michael Spinks was the shit, man. He was a badass.
Completely.
Yeah. And for people to remember him just because he was scared to death that Tyson got pancaked in the first round, that's a damn shame. That's a damn shame.
Absolutely, man. No, I'm with you. Well, the good news is Ring Theory has triumphs and tragedies in these essays of 35 years that Bill Dettloff is giving us with this brand new book. Available on Amazon. You can order it online. Any other places to order it, Bill?
Barnes & Noble also.
There you go. Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Absolutely, man. Well done. Please come back maybe in April after these two big heavyweight fights, and we can
be happy to. Sure.
That'd be great, buddy. No, truly.
Always
a pleasure talking to you, Bill. You know that.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Tomorrow night, I'll be talking to Richard Hamilton. Richard's got, we're going to get back to comic books. Speed Racer, one of Speed Racer comic book that Richard has written. We're going to talk about that. And then also his own creation, a young journalist. And wow, what a time to be writing about journalism in comic books. But the fourth volume is Scoop. All that and more with Richard Hamilton tomorrow on Word Balloon Live. I hope you'll join us then. Until then, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.